What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Whiskey Explorer. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. And if this is your first time on the channel, if you could please just a quick favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think about this bourbon, and we'll continue the conversation at the Whiskey Explorer. And tonight, guys, we have got the Maker's Mark 101. So the question here is, will this Maker's Mark 101 finally turn me into a Maker's believer? Also, is it, in my opinion, my humble opinion of course, my opinion's only on this channel, is this the best Maker's Mark that they've come out with? So if you have watched the channel before, you may have noticed that I'm not particularly a huge fan of Maker's Mark. There's just tends to be sort of a bitter tannic finish to it that I don't quite connect with for my palate. So we'll go into this whiskey here and we'll see how it does. And then we will also compare it to the traditional Maker's Mark, just the 45% ABV or a 90 proof version. All right, and just some quick background for Maker's Mark. So Maker's Mark is a wheated bourbon. So a wheater or a wheated bourbon means that they are replacing the rye in the traditional mash bill with wheat instead. So instead of it being corn, rye, and malted barley, it is corn, wheat, and malted barley. And that, of course, gives it some unique flavor profile characteristics that we'll go into in the review. All right. So Maker's Mark 101, this was originally a travel exclusive, but then it was actually during the pandemic that they kind of introduced it to the larger whiskey world. First it was in the States, and then luckily it came here to Canada. So it's actually a little bit of an expensive bottle here. It's about $85 Canadian, $86 somewhere in there, plus tax, of course. The lowest that I've seen it in Alberta was about $81.99, but the nice thing about Alberta is, of course, is just the 5% tax instead of the 15% that is here in BC. It is bottled at 101 proof or 50.5% ABV, so we're getting a nice kick up in the proof there. All right, let's have a quick look at the color in the glass here. Oh, and I should also mention presentation-wise. So this comes in, actually it's a decently nice box, but one thing that's interesting about it is actually a screw cap up there. So you'd think we're kind of getting into the more premium Maker's Mark offering, you know, hopefully there'd be a cork, but alas, just a screw top. All right, let's get into the review here. Let's check out the color there. So it is kind of a light copper color, light amber, not too much color to that one there. Let's give it a quick swirl in the glass here and then we'll go in for a nose. On the nose, let's check it out. Very, very candy sweet nose. This is like so much vanilla cream and cherries. So it's like, it reminds me of like a vanilla Coke that's really sort of coming through, sorry, a vanilla cherry Coke. So really coming through with very strong sweet characteristics, almost like a sweet strawberry candy. You know those candies you get, I can't remember exactly what they're called. I think they're called like, it starts with a C, but they're like those strawberry candies and they're kind of like white and, you know, pink, and they're sort of like a pinwheel design. It's one of those, like a cream saver, one of those. I think that's what they're called, something like that. So very sweet kind of strawberry candy, cotton candy nose to it. Almost those strawberry gummies, those 5-cent candies you get at the gas station or whatever. So very, very sweet on the nose. Cherries, vanilla Coke. Yeah, just more of that, just pure sweetness in there. Now it's giving way to a little bit of brown sugar, and we're picking up some caramel and butterscotch notes in there. I have to admit, it's a super inviting nose. There's even just a slight hint of nuttiness in the background there. It's almost like a sweet type of pecan or hazelnut, something to that effect. Maybe even some milk chocolate in the background there. Honestly, a super inviting nose. There's even a little hint of maple syrup there as well. Let's go in for a taste on the palate. Cheers. Okay, so the palate definitely follows the nose. There's almost like this cotton candy sweetness to this, very dense, sweet, dessert-like quality. Nice sort of vanilla note in there. Some cherries and cream. Some strawberry notes. So definitely the bright fruit notes are in there, but there is some cherry mixed in with some strawberry, honey, brown sugar, caramel, and butterscotch. Slight hint of maple syrup on the very back end there. A little bit of spice now coming in, so mid-palate to finish. Coming in with just a little bit of peppery spice, so a little bit of white pepper. I do sometimes get that spicy note from a wheated bourbon, but it's all in all quite a nice bourbon. I actually do enjoy that. That's quite good. Let me go in for a second sip. Here we go. Cheers. So I got some oak on that sip. Right at the very beginning, there was a rush of oak. It was an interesting oak note because the astringent oak note that I mentioned at the beginning of the review that I don't really like on Makers is sort of mixed with this sweet oak note, so it kind of balances it out. So you get a nice hit of oak there in the beginning. A little bit of nuttiness comes with that oak. So there's that pecan or hazelnut note in there. Then gives way to brown sugar, sweet vanillas, caramel and butterscotch, and definitely that cherry note or strawberry note is present as well. So this is actually a very nice dram. I'm not super happy about the price on it. I think it should really be placed more like a $50 to $60 bottle. The regular Maker's Mark right here, like the regular 45% or 90 proof Makers, is around $45. So I would really rather see this sit at about 60 instead of 85. 85 is where the private select labels are coming in at, and those are actually like 55%, so you get a bit of a more of a proof on there, and it's also got those hand-selected staves for the finishing. But all in all, definitely nice dram. I would recommend, and I can finally recommend to Makers, the Maker's Mark 101. So now let's just take a quick comparison to the regular 45% 90 proof Maker's Mark. I've got this little cute sample bottle that I still had some from the last comparison that I did, and I'll put a link to the review up above here. That was when I was doing the Maker's Mark Private Select. All right, so regular Makers on the nose. Cheers. This is interesting. So there is some of the same components to the nose here, but it's less complex than the nose on the Maker's Mark 101. There's just an overall sweetness to this, honey sweetness, butterscotch, vanilla, and caramel. A little bit of fruit jumping out there, so there's a little bit of cherry note, but not nearly as jumping out of the glass and sort of present as the Maker's Mark 101. So let's go ahead and take a sip on the palate. Cheers. Okay, so that is a much more simple dram. That is vanilla sweetness, a little bit of oak in the beginning, a little bit of cherry as well, sort of mixed in. It has hints of this one, but it doesn't have nearly the complexity of the 101. So it's a much more simple, straightforward dram. You get the vanilla and honey sweetness in the beginning. Mixed in, there it is. Okay, so there on the mid palate, that's when that astringent, bitter oak note comes in that I really don't like on Makers. It's very present in the regular expression, the 45% or 90 proof version. It's rearing its ugly head. Mixed in with that sort of astringent, drying, sort of bitter oak note, there is some spice, and it's even spicier than the 101, in my opinion. We're talking more like black pepper to cayenne level of spice there in the finish. So yeah, much more straightforward dram. The 101 is much more complex, in my opinion, much more enjoyable. So I would go for the Maker's Mark 101, and I would pass on the regular Maker's Mark. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me for this review. Until next time, may your sails be full and your drowns be fuller. Cheers.